raised and equipped in a hurry will be of small use to me. In the name of Allah the Compassionate and his Holy Prophet, give me my 80 galleys and let me go." In Hayreddin Barbarossa, sound strategical instinct went hand in hand with the desperate valor of the Corsair. To dally in the Golden Horn, while so rich a prey was at sea to be picked up by his Christian foes, was altogether opposed to his instincts. Never to throw away a chance in the game of life had ever been his guiding principle. Suleiman, great man as he undoubtedly was, had not the adamantine hardness of character which enabled his admiral to risk all on the hazards of the moment. Or possibly the Grand Turk was deficient in that clearness of strategical instinct which never, in any circumstances, foregoes a present advantage for something which may turn out well in a problematical future. Suleiman, sore, sullen, and unapproachable, dwelt in his palace brooding over the misfortunes which had been his lot since the death of Ibrahim. Barbarossa, who so recently had lost practically all that he possessed, and who had reached an age at which most men have no hopes for the future, was as clear in intellect, as undaunted in spirit as if he had been half a century younger. To be even once more with those by whom he had been defeated and dispossessed was the only thing now in his mind. The capture of Saleh Reis and his convoy would be a triumph of which he could not bear to think. Further, it would add to the demoralization of the sea forces of the Sultan, which were sadly in need of some striking success after the defeats which had so recently been their portion. The Sultan had decided that 150 ships were necessary. His admiral thought otherwise. There was too much at stake for him to dally at Constantinople. His fiery energy swept all before it, and in the end he had his way. On June the 7th, 1538, he finally triumphed over the hesitations of the viziers, and put to sea with 80 sail. The Sultan, from his kiosk, the windows of which opened on the Bosphorus, counted the ships. "Only 80 sail? Is that all?" he asked. The trembling viziers prostrated themselves before him. "O our lord, the Padishah!" they cried. "Saleh Reis comes from Alexandria with a rich convoy. Somewhere lurking is Andrea Doria, the accursed. It was necessary, O magnificent, to send succor." There was a pause, in which the hearts of men beat as do those who know not but that the next moment may be their last on earth. The Sultan stared from his window at the retreating ships, in a silence like the silence of the grave. At last he turned. "So be it," he answered briefly, "but see to it that reinforcements do not lag upon the road." If there had been activity in the dockyards before, it was as nothing to the strenuous work that was to be done henceforward. Before starting on this expedition, Hayreddin had made an innovation in the manning of some of the most powerful of his galleys, which was of the utmost importance, and which was to add enormously to the success of his future maritime enterprises. The custom had always been that the Ottoman galleys had been rowed by Christians, captured and enslaved. Of course the converse was true in the galleys of their foes. There were, for the size of the vessels, an enormous number of men carried in the galleys of the 16th century, and an average craft of this description would have on board some 400 men. Of these, however, the proportion would be 250 slaves to 150 fighting men. That which Hayreddin now insisted upon was that a certain proportion of his most powerful units should be rowed by Moslem fighting men, so that on the day of battle the oarsmen could join in the fray instead of remaining chained to their benches, as was the custom with the slaves. It is, however, an extraordinary testimony to the influence which the Corsair had attained in Constantinople that he had been able to effect this change in the composition of some of his crews. It must have been done with the active co-operation of the Sultan, as no authority less potent than that of the sovereign himself could have induced free men to undertake the terrible toil of rower in a galley. This was reserved for the unfortunate slave on either side, owing to the intolerable hardship of the life, and results in the pace at which a galley proceeded through the water were usually obtained by an unsparing use of the lash on the naked bodies of the rowers. This human material was used up in the most prodigal manner possible, as those in command had not the inducement of treating the rowers well, from that economic standpoint which causes a man to so use his beast of burden as to get the best work from him. In the galley, when a slave would row no more, he was flung overboard. and another was put in his place. The admiral, however, even when backed by the Padishah, could not man a large fleet of galleys with Moslem rowers, and as there was a shortage in the matter of propelling power, his first business was to collect slaves, and for this purpose he visited the islands of the archipelago. The lot of the unhappy inhabitants of these was indeed a hard one. They were nearer to the seat of the Moslem power than any other Christians. They were in those days totally unable to resist an attack in force, and in consequence were swept off in their thousands. 7 islands cover the entrance to the Gulf of Volo. The nearest to the coast is Skiathos, which is also the most important. It was defended by a castle built upon a rock. This castle was attacked by Barbarossa, who bombarded it for 6 days, carried it by assault, and massacred the garrison. He spared the lives of the inhabitants of the island, and by this means secured 3,400 rowers for his galleys. He had to provide motor power for the reinforcements which he expected. In July he was reinforced from Constantinople by 90 galleys, while from Egypt came Saleh Reish, who had succeeded in avoiding the terrible Doria, with 20 more. The fleet was thus complete. End of section 6. Recording by Marion Martin.